Hi crochet friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Stefania and today is the second check-in video for the 100-day project 2026. In the last check-in video, I covered days 1 through 10, so if you missed that, I'll have it linked in the description below. Today is day 11 and I'm back at it making more leaves for my project. I know I mentioned in the end of the last check-in video that this week I wanted to focus more on the flowers and other plant components, but today I woke up and just felt like making more leaves. I'm making another type of leaf today, drawing inspiration from this photo. I'll be making these leaves using this light shade of green and some thin wire. The wire will make it easier to add the leaves to a singular branch once I've got them completed. Without further ado, let's get on to the crocheting. To make these leaves, I started off by crocheting around the wire for 10 stitches. I chained 1, then worked my way up one side of this foundation chain, starting with 2 single crochet stitches, then moving on to 2 half double crochet stitches, 4 double crochet stitches, then 1 more half double crochet, 1 more single crochet, and then I chained 3 and slip stitched into the first chain. I then worked my way back down the other side of the wire, doing the reverse of that pattern without the chain 3 part. When I got to the base of the leaf, I slip stitched into the initial stitch and then fastened off the tail. This is a pretty straightforward way to make little leaves, and I might end up making larger versions of this leaf for further down on the stem. I really like this light green color that I've chosen for these leaves, even though it's not the most realistic color. Regardless, I think it'll contrast nicely with the bright greens and the darker greens that I've already used in my project. There's a closer look at the little leaves I'm making today. I went ahead and made more of these little leaves off camera, but I think I'll save them for tomorrow to turn into stems. Well, that's what I've created for day 11 of the 100-day project. I'll see you shortly for day 12. We're back with day 12. Yesterday, I had made 8 of these smaller leaves, so today I added more small leaves and made some larger ones as well. To make these larger leaves, I started with a chain of 13 single crochet stitches around the wire. By adding in just 3 extra stitches, I was able to work up into treble crochet stitches, creating these larger leaves. I think I'm going to end up making these stems brown to add a bit of contrast and to differentiate them from other stems of leaves. It's a bit fiddly wrapping the wires on camera, so I'm going to complete these stems off camera, and I'll be back in a couple of moments for day 13. Today, on day 13, I woke up early and wrapped these leaves into stems. I did have to add a longer wire to the stem at the center in order to create the full stem. I do still need to do some finishing detail work, but that's similar with the other leaves that I've made. I plan on saving all that detail work till the very end of the project when I get to the assembly stage. To give you a better idea of the process, I first wrapped the stems of each of the 4 outer leaves, trimming the wire, leaving some of the stem at the very end exposed. I then attached a longer wire to this center leaf and started wrapping from the top. When I got to the joint, I wrapped the wires from the ends of the other leaves and then secured using the yarn. I wrapped in between each of the leaves as well to kind of hold them into place. This way, even if I pull the leaves around, they're not going to fall off. I then continued wrapping down, repeating the same process with the next set of leaves. I continued wrapping down one side of the stem, and I had some wire left at the end. I then folded the wire back on itself and continued wrapping towards the top. When I reached the thicker part of the stem, where the wires from the final leaves were, I tied off the yarn and cut it short. Having wires in each of the leaves is really going to help when it comes time to assemble them. I can bend the leaves in all sorts of directions to create a fuller, bushy kind of look, rather than these flat leaf elements. You kind of get an idea of what that might look like here. Anyways, I'm really happy with how these leaves turned out, and honestly I'll probably end up making some more stems with this same color combination. I really like the way it looks, and it'll help fill out some of the spaces on the canvas. Like I mentioned, filming this assembly stage is a little finicky with having to keep the right camera angles, so I hope you enjoyed this brief recap of what I crafted on day 13. I'll see you in a couple moments where I'll talk about day 14. On day 14, I started yet another plant, this time in the Bromeliaceae family. I started with the leaves and chose this variegated yarn which lended itself to the stripes that I saw in the reference photo. I know it's not a perfect color match to the leaves, but I thought I would get the idea across well enough. I did spend most of the day working on my Stardew Valley farm, and only realized later in the day that I still had some crochet work to do. So I only ended up making these 4 small leaves. The next day, day 15, I started with my crafting instead of procrastinating on it. I made these 4 larger leaves, continuing my work on the bromeliad. I didn't get around to filming anything on day 15 because my partner planned a surprise date night where we went to this glow-in-the-dark paint and sip. We had a lot of fun painting these mushrooms, and it was a nice break from my crochet work. Here we are on day 16, where I continued work on this plant. Along with the filming to catch you up on days 14 and 15, I made 1 more leaf. After connecting the leaves together, I decided to start some work on the flower. Looking at the reference photo, I wanted to use these 3 different colors to capture the look of this flower. I know what I created doesn't look exactly like the reference, but I think I got close enough. It was a challenge getting the petals to look like the reference image while still making them in proportion to the leaves. Ideally, I would have made the yellow parts a bit spikier, but I couldn't do that without making them a lot larger. I still have to make these pointy red bits and assemble the full flower, but I'm really happy with my progress for today. Thanks for joining me as I shared what I worked on for the past couple of days, and I'll see you soon with a continuation of this project for day 17. On day 17, I made the red pointy bits of this flower. I started in a similar way to how I made the leaves, where I increased slowly and then leveled it out. I chose this bright red-orange color to go with the reference image. I only had a bit of this yarn left, so I only ended up making 4 of these points. It was a really fun process, and I got to continue practicing my stop motion techniques. It only took a short amount of time to make these red points, so I still had some crafting time left in my day to assemble the flower. Here's the completed flower. It's a little hard to get the full thing in frame, but you get a nice idea of what this finished flower looks like. I took a longer wire and started wrapping it at the very tip. As I made my way down the wire, I added on the petals. I also tied in the red points in between the petals, trying to just get a similar feel to the reference image. I initially only had 2 wires in the center stem, but I had finished wrapping them and attaching them to the leaves, and they just weren't standing up on their own. So I went back and added a thicker wire, and now it stands up well enough. I did end up with a couple of extra petals that I didn't add on to this main flower, so I'll either end up making another one of these flowers or just accepting that these petals are extras and leaving them off the finished canvas. Following the success of my completed bromeliad on day 17, I decided on day 18 to start another type of plant, a heliconia. Looking at the reference image, I decided to start by making the leaves. Here's my first attempt of a leaf. I like it, but I don't think it's the exact shape that I'm looking for with this plant. I like the top part of it, but I think I decreased too soon and created more of this diamond-ish shaped leaf rather than an oval one. Even though I'm not perfectly happy with the shape of this leaf, I'm still going to leave it in the bunch and just work on the other leaves and hope that they have a better shape. Since I'm trying to replicate nature, it only makes sense that no 2 leaves will be exactly the same, so it's okay that this one has a slightly inaccurate shape. Keeping in mind the shape I ended up with the previous leaf, I'm going to adapt my technique for the next one. I start with single crochet stitches, then work my way into half double, double, and finally treble crochet stitches to create the shape of the leaf. With the previous leaf, I increased the size of these stitches slowly, resulting in the tapered look. However, since I wanted a more rounded look in this next leaf, I'm going to increase the size of these stitches a lot faster. I'll end up having a lot more treble crochet stitches, but I think it'll result in the shape of leaf that I'm trying to achieve. Comparing it to my first leaf, you can see the impact that this faster increase has on the shape of the leaf. I'm going to continue the treble crochet stitches up to about the same point as in the previous leaf, and then probably decrease in the same way that I had previously. I could also consider increasing past the treble crochet stitches to make the leaves even larger. But for this second leaf, I'm going to limit it to the treble crochet stitches. I can always choose to make the following leaves larger. Now that I'm further along on this leaf, let's compare the shapes again. As you can see, I'm at the point where in the first leaf I reached the maximum width of the leaf. Looking back at the reference image, I think this second leaf recreates the shape of the leaf a little bit more accurately, although it is difficult to see the exact shape of the leaf in the image. But I'm a lot happier with how this leaf is shaping up so far. I'll proceed with decreasing back down to single crochet stitches. Now that I'm down to a single crochet stitch, it's time to turn the leaf around and work my way back down the opposite side. I'm first going to bend the tip of this wire down and scoot my stitches so that the single crochet stitch is at the very top of the wire. I'm going to squeeze this wire as close to itself as I can achieve, so that when I continue crocheting down, I'll hide the end of this wire. I'm then going to chain one, and then instead of working in the tops of the previous stitches, I'm going to work my way back down on the inside along the wire. Like I said, for these first couple of stitches, I'm trying to cover the other side of the wire, but as we work our way down, we'll be just working on the initial pass of the wire. It can be a little bit difficult to see exactly where I want to put my stitch, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where the stitch ends up as long as I work my way back down the side of the leaf. I find it easiest to just insert my hook in between the posts of the stitches, especially when I get down to this treble crochet stitch area. I really like that by crocheting on either side of the wire, our stitches line up like the veins in a leaf do. Now that I've gotten back to the first stitch that I did on this leaf, instead of a single crochet stitch, I'm going to do a slip stitch. I'm then going to do a chain one and pull a long tail. Let's compare the shape of these first two leaves again. You can really see the difference that increasing my stitch width quickly had on the overall shape of the leaf. I much prefer this second shape of leaf, so I'm going to continue this technique moving forward. There's the first two leaves of our heliconia complete, and I'm going to go ahead and make more leaves now. And there's the 4 leaves that I made for today's project. I'm really happy with how they turned out and how they're all slightly different from one another. Thanks for joining me on day 18, and I'll see you in a couple moments where I continue work on this plant on day 19. Welcome back with day 19 of the 100-day project. This morning I resumed work on my heliconia, this time working on the flower portion. I started off by making these small orange portions, and then created the pink parts. Forgive me for not knowing the technical terms. I really tried to mimic the reference image as I went along, even holding the pieces up to the computer screen to compare their sizes. I like how the pink and green pieces look, although in the reference image there is a lighter color in between the pink and the green. You can also see in the reference image that on the tips of the orange bits there is a little stripe of white and black. I decided to not add these details at this moment, but I might end up embroidering or even painting them on later down the road. Once I created all of the pieces of the flower, it was time to assemble them. I'm really thrilled with how this flower turned out. Of all the components I've made so far during this project, I think this one matches the reference image most accurately. It's been nice to take a break from just pure green components and work with some other colors. I'm looking forward to when I assemble the greater canvas and seeing how these pops of color will look against the sea of green. Thanks for joining me for day 19, and I'll see you shortly with day 20. We're back with day 20, and I'm again working on my heliconia. Today I made 6 more leaves for this project and assembled the flower. I really love the way this flower looks, although I think I will end up going back and embroidering or painting in some more details. I mentioned the details I want to add to the flower part, but I think I also want to add some of this brighter green color onto the leaves to help tie the whole plant together. Along with adding more details to the flowers, I can also bend the wires inside of the leaves to add a bit more movement to this plant, making it more lifelike. I'm really proud of how this flower turned out, and I look forward to seeing it on the canvas with the rest of the things I've been making. Now that I'm done with the heliconia, I can move on to another plant for tomorrow. Well, I'm back, and today is actually day 23. Days 21 and 22 were over the weekend, and I just didn't have the time to film. However, I did manage to still craft each day, so I'll show you what I did over the weekend. On day 21, I revisited my palm project. This time, instead of focusing on the leaves, I worked on adding these palm fruits. Looking at the reference image, the fruits really look like little beads to me, so I went out and bought 100 of these little round wooden beads. I really love the texture that the beads add to this work, and I'm really happy with how this cluster ended up looking. It doesn't exactly replicate the reference image, but I think it gets close enough to get the idea across. It was very relaxing hanging out on the couch and crocheting with these beads. With just chaining and slip stitching, it was easy to just zone out and let the yarn and the beads do what they wanted. Last week, I went out shopping and managed to find yarn that was a close match to the olive green color I used for my palm leaves previously. It might not be a 100% match, but it was the closest I could find after searching in several different stores. So for day 22, I continued my project by starting another palm frond. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this project, I would like to have 3 or even 4 palm fronds, but since I only picked up 50 more grams of yarn, it looks like I'll end up with only 3 palm fronds. But I think this will be enough to achieve the look that I'm going for with this project. Worst case scenario, I at least know which store sells this shade of yarn. Like I mentioned, today is day 23 of the 100-day project. I'm finishing up this palm frond and catching up on some filming. I've managed to film these updates most days during this project, and I've been editing behind the scenes each day. Editing in smaller chunks is really helping to speed up my process, and it means that this video came out a lot faster than it would have if I had started editing at the end of the day 25. Anyways, I'm going to finish up with this palm frond off camera, and I'll see you back here in just a couple moments with day 24. Welcome back to day 24. This morning, I went ahead and crocheted this orchid, referencing this image. As you can see in the reference photo, there's some different colors in addition to the bright pink. So I'm going to go ahead and embroider on some of those colorful details now. I have white, yellow, and this darker magenta color. I think I'm going to start with this inner portion first, adding on the white and darker magenta colors, and then embroidering some yellow over top. Let's get started with that. Normally when I embroider, I split the thread into different strands so that I'm able to add some finer details. But since I'm using the thread to color in the piece that I've already crocheted, I don't think that this step is necessary. With some of the other pieces I've created during this project so far, I have mentioned wanting to embroider on some details. When I made them, I decided to hold off on embroidering details right away, but since I've already got the orchid crocheted this morning, I have some extra time to do some crafting now. Rather than work on the leaves for the orchid, I figured now's a great time to try out this embroidery technique. I'm using this blunt-tipped yarn needle because I don't need the sharp point of a needle that I would normally use when embroidering. This one works its way through the yarn just fine. I'm not really following a set technique or pattern for these stitches. I'm really just adding stitches in wherever I think the white needs to go. Seeing how thin the embroidery thread is on the crocheted piece, I probably could have used yarn to color in the embroidered details, but I didn't want to add too much bulk to the piece. This isn't my cleanest embroidery work, but it's going to get the job done. It's definitely one of those trust the process moments. It might not look great as I start off, but I believe that as I keep embroidering on details, it'll continue looking better and better. Already, seeing how I've progressed so far, I'm really happy with how it's starting to look. I think I want to fill in a bit more white higher up inside of the flower, so that when I add in the yellow part, it'll look more like the reference image. Speaking of the reference image, I can't really tell if the white that I'm seeing on the sides of the petals and on the top of this middle part are actual white parts of the flower, or if that's just the reflection of the light. I'll focus on this inner part first and decide later if I want to embroider on any other colors on the petals of the flower. That's looking pretty good so far. I'm going to stop with the white at this moment, but I'll leave the tail on in case I want to add on more white later. Next, let's add some dark magenta. I don't typically embroider on top of crochet pieces that I've made. The only embroidery that I tend to do with my crochet is to add a face onto the amigurumi that I make. This project is a great way to remind me that embroidery is always an option on top of crochet work, and that it can be used to add in some finer details. You might see in this footage that I do have to deal with untangling these threads on occasion, but that's just part of the craft. I decided not to go all the way to the edge with the dark magenta color, even though in the reference photo the dark magenta is the entire lower part of the flower. I took some artistic liberties to leave the edge this same bright pink, but I don't mind the way that this makes it look. I am only drawing inspiration from the reference photo after all. I crocheted this orchid in 2 pieces. First, I made the back piece with the 5 separate petals, and then I created the central flower piece and tied it onto the center. I figured this was the easiest way to make the orchid shape without any complex stitches. As always, if you're interested in learning how I've made any of these pieces that you see in this video, leave a comment in the comments down below. If there's enough interest, I'll work on creating a tutorial video. I'm really loving the way that this is looking so far, so I'm going to continue embroidering on some of these details, and I'll join you back when that's complete. And here we are with my completed orchid flower. I'm really glad that I decided to add on some embroidered details because it really helps sell the whole concept as an actual flower. I can just imagine a little pollinator being attracted to that yellow spot and diving on in. I'll give you a peek at the underside of my embroidery. It's not the cleanest ever, but you know, I don't think many people will be looking underneath the flower once it's on the canvas. I decided not to add in any of the highlights with embroidery, but decided that once the flower is attached to the canvas, if I'm still missing the highlights, I can go in and add those later. Let me know what you think about this flower in the comments down below. Thanks for joining me for day 24, and I'll see you in a couple moments for the last check-in of this video, day 25. We're back with day 25, and today I'm continuing work on my orchid. I started off the morning by making 10 of these leaves, although it took me a couple of attempts at first to get the shape that I was trying to make. I wasn't sure exactly how many leaves I wanted to make, so I used the reference image as an approximation. I chose this bright green color because I thought it worked well with the pink of the flower. Once I had the leaves made, it was time to assemble the complete orchid. I started off by splitting the leaves into pairs and twisting them together. I then took a thicker wire and some brown yarn and started assembling the branches. I wanted to split the wire into 3 different branches to better mimic how an orchid grows. I'm really pleased with how this orchid turned out. It's one of the favorite components that I've made in this project so far. I'm really proud of myself for already getting through 1/4 of this project. I've made a lot of components already, but I know that there's a lot more to come. Just for my own curiosity's sake, let's lay out all of the components that I've made so far. I've gone ahead and laid out all of the plants that I've made so far against the canvas that I'm going to be using. I'm so glad that I did this because it really helps me visualize the progress that I've made in the last 25 days. There's still quite a lot of canvas space that I'll need to fill up, but it's feeling a lot more achievable than it did at the beginning of this project. While I love all the different greens that I've got going, and the textures from the different leaves, the standout elements to me are definitely the flowers. So I think moving forward, I'll continue making flowers to add these bright pops of color to the project. Of course, I'll continue making green leaves to fill up the canvas more, but it's nice to get an indication of how this project is coming together. Thanks for watching till the end of the video. If you liked this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. I make new videos every week, including check-in videos, crochet tutorials, and other craft content. During the 100-day project, I'm going to be releasing check-in videos every other week and my regular content in between. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite plant that I made in this check-in video was, and if you'd like to see a tutorial for it. If you're also participating in the 100-day project, I'd love to hear about what you've been making. If you'd like more regular updates on what I've been making during the 100-day project, follow me on Instagram at @artbystefania. I've been posting daily updates in my story. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!